We're assigned a sex at birth, male or female, and many people identify with the sex they are assigned. But for others, their sex doesn't reflect who they are, or, in other words, their sex doesn't match their gender identity. Transgender or trans are umbrella terms to represent people whose sex doesn't match their gender. Each individual will use a term that best represents them, but we will use the terms trans and transgender. Some trans people present their gender through their clothing, personal expression and lifestyle, and others choose to have medical treatment as well. This is known as gender reassignment, which is a protected characteristic. People are protected from discrimination if they are planning to undergo, are currently undergoing, or have already gone through a process or part of a process of gender reassignment. Workplace gender reassignment discrimination is more likely to occur when employers are recruiting, promoting, training and dismissing staff or making redundancies, so it's crucial that your employer protects any transgender employees from discrimination and harassment. They must never ask questions relating to someone's gender in job interviews, and they must make sure that trans employees have equal and fair access to all workplace opportunities. In the ideal workplace, your employer has created a kind and inclusive culture at work, and they have support in place for trans employees before it's asked for. A good place to start is making sure your workplace has trans-inclusive policies, covering things such as the company dress code and use of toilet changing and shower facilities. They also need to actively change an employee's personal records, payslips and work passes when needed. It's likely that someone will find it daunting to tell others about their trans identity. In the workplace, managers should follow the employee's lead and agree on what steps will be taken before, during and after the employee's transition, and which colleagues, if any, will be told about it. They can also put meetings in the diary along the way to reassure them and make time for any unforeseen matters. If someone shares this information with you, respond sensitively, take the time to listen and reassure them that they have your support. It's important to consider that someone who has undergone gender reassignment may no longer identify as transgender at all, and they have every right to keep their gender history private. If you come across information of a sensitive nature like this, you are legally required to keep the information confidential, unless your colleague consents to you sharing it. On the other hand, they may freely express their gender or trans identity, and they must feel safe and supported in doing so.
The law protects people who identify as male or female. This is a gender binary, which limits people to choose between one or the other. But the law doesn't yet fully protect people who don't identify as either male or female, or those that move between the two. Each individual uses a term that accurately represents their identity, but in this slide we'll use the umbrella term non-binary. Someone who identifies as non-binary may be protected if they are discriminated against because someone assumes they are considering or undergoing gender reassignment, whether or not this is true. But regardless of the law, people who identify as non-binary have every right to the same protection, respect and workplace opportunities as their colleagues. Non-binary individuals should be considered and represented in workplace policies, procedures and support systems. They are a marginalised group that can suffer from discrimination and unfair treatment, just like those who have one or a number of the protected characteristics. And it's crucial that each individual feels supported and valued. Pronouns are important in writing and in person. These are words that are used to refer to someone's gender, for example, he or she. But these two pronouns aren't gender neutral, and it's harmful to use them to describe a non-binary individual. Gender neutral pronouns are the way to go because they are genderless. You may have heard people using they, per, sie, sie or vi to replace he or she, here to replace him or her, and the title mix is sometimes used instead of Mr., Mrs., Miss or Ms. But it's important to never assume someone's gender identity. It's always best to ask them how they define their gender and what pronouns they use. Even though using these terms can take some getting used to, and there's some natural leeway if someone accidentally uses he or she in the beginning, it's important to know that consistently using the wrong pronouns with a non-binary person can cause hurt and offence, which amounts to harassment. No two gender identities are exactly the same. Once again, it's about getting to know each person as an individual and respecting their uniqueness. The reality is that the sex and gender a person is assigned at birth is based on physical characteristics and nothing more. Us humans are complex creatures, and if someone's gender identity doesn't neatly fit into a male or female box, it's their human right to express their true gender identity in any way that aligns with who they are. If you'd like information on gender-neutral terminology and the progress that's being made for the non-binary community, check out our additional resources.
Pregnancy and being on maternity leave are protected characteristics, which means it's discrimination to treat someone unfairly because they are pregnant, have taken maternity leave, or have exercised any of their maternity rights at work. These legal rights include not being asked about pregnancy or childcare at interviews, attending antenatal appointments, taking maternity leave, receiving statutory maternity pay, regardless of how long they've worked for the company. And when they return to work after maternity leave, an employee has a right to return to their previous role or a suitable alternative with similar terms and conditions. If an employee has complications or difficulties during their pregnancy, your employer will make reasonable adjustments by temporarily adapting their role, working hours, or equipment as needed. If they're off sick because of their pregnancy, it doesn't count towards an employee's sickness record at work, and this includes any time that's taken off because of a miscarriage. As far as the team are concerned, all you really need to do is to be fair and considerate. Make sure that your pregnant colleagues are still included in social events and in progression opportunities, and assume they're able to carry on with their role and responsibilities unless they or their manager tells you otherwise. But saying that, it's still important to be mindful, so if you notice them struggling physically or emotionally, simply offer your support, whether it's practical help or just a listening ear.
Marriages and civil partnerships are protected from discrimination if the union is recognised under UK law, even if it was registered abroad, and the protection still stands even if the couple are separated. This means that it's unlawful to discriminate against people because of who they are married to or in a civil partnership with. However, protection doesn't cover people who are single, engaged, divorced, widowed, or whose civil partnership has been dissolved. Everyone in a marriage or civil partnership has the same rights to survivor pensions, flexible working, healthcare insurance, and maternity or paternity pay. And it's discrimination if someone is treated unfairly because of this protected characteristic. For example, if an employer doesn't offer a job or promotion to a suitably qualified person just because that person would be reporting directly to their spouse or civil partner. If you would like more information on UK legislation that protects the rights of same-sex couples and opposite-sex couples, please see our additional resources. But legislation aside, people's relationship statuses and choice of partners should be treated with respect, acceptance, and discretion.